Hi guys, just a quick heads up. I know most of you have been waiting on me to upload my next submarine shenanigans video, but I won't be able to upload one of those anytime soon on account of my hard drive deciding to shit the bed, dying on me and taking my entire library of gameplay from the last year as well as all my memes and previous content with it. With that being said, and with little other choice, in order to avoid my channel being abandoned and dying an early death like a newborn Chinese baby girl, I've been left with no other choice but to upload one type of video that every struggling content creator resorts to when they run out of ideas or gameplay to upload. Now for those of you who aren't interested in this type of content, I recommend stopping the video here. But if you're someone interested in supporting my channel, or are interested in hearing the perspective of someone who's accrued an unhealthy amount of playtime over the last couple of years, or are one of the many developers at FacePunch working on this game who have clearly lost their direction and thought adding a fucking caboose cart with virtual blackjack would make for a good addition to this game, then all I have to say is sit tight, take notes, and thanks for watching. Now everyone who plays this game is well accustomed with the small rocks that you spawn with, but what if we could go bigger? Now tell me if this scenario sounds at all familiar. Standing on the roof of your base, you observe a small retarded Russian child door camping you while screaming belligerently into their mic. Armed with nothing but a small rock, you throw it down onto the head of the small retarded Russian child. Now whilst this might feel satisfying, it proves ultimately ineffective. But what if we were to approach this same scenario from a different perspective, armed not with a small rock, but a big one? Now whilst a large rock might seem like a simple weapon, it also makes for an incredibly simple addition to the game that any developer should be able to add in a future update, and an early game, albeit primitive method for players to defend their base, and is something that's long overdue in my opinion. Now this next idea leads on from the previous one, but what if, instead of using rocks defensively, we use them offensively? Now obviously throwing a small rock at a base has no impact, and if the devs were to add large rocks to the game, they would have to limit the distance and power with which they can be thrown by the player. This would have to be for obvious balance reasons, as the average person can barely lift a rock their own size, much less throw one. Fortunately for us, there does exist a nearly €2,000 solution to this problem, and that comes in the form of artillery, such as a catapult or trebuchet. These could fulfill a niche but effective role for players when raiding. These would be a perfect fit on the tier 2 workbench tech tree, and be the perfect bridge to fill the progression gap between the tier 1 satchel charge and the late game tier 3 explosives. Now staying on the topic of weapons, the next suggestion I have is closely tied to a long-standing issue that has largely gone ignored by the developers of Rust. Now as any player who spent any significant amount of time on an oil rig will already know, the biggest frustration and threat that they face is the prospect of counters flying in on either a scrap heli or a mini. Currently, players only have one of two ways to reliably fight these counters, the first being relying on your aim to shoot the pilot out before they can land, and the second being high velocity rockets. What if there was a third option? My suggestion is adding in a shoulder-mounted anti-air rocket launcher, such as the Stinger or Javelin launchers, for the specific purpose of shooting down player-manned aerial vehicles. And it's not as though adding this to the game would be a difficult task, as most of the assets and components already exist in game. Developers could quite easily create this weapon by taking the pre-existing rocket launcher model, slapping on a targeting computer to reflect the tracking aspect of the weapon, making it compatible with the pre-existing SAM ammo that's already used in SAM turrets for the exact same purpose of shooting down area vehicles. Combine all three and you have the Rust equivalent of a Stinger missile launcher, and honestly, if even I'm capable of coming up with such a simple concept in the space of 5 minutes, there's absolutely no excuse why FacePunch shouldn't have been able to incorporate this into the game already. And with rumours of FacePunch intending to add parachutes and the player equivalent to an attack helicopter to the game, there's never been a greater need for this weapon to be added to Rust. Okay, so the title for this one's pretty self-explanatory. FacePunch, you need to add SAM sites onto the oil rig. Just like with launch site, it's far too easy for players to fly up onto the top of oil rig, skip half the scientists, and then complete the rig. There's plenty of ways that FacePunch can balance this, such as adding a switch inside of the red room that allows players to disable and enable the SAM sites as and when they please. However, players should have to approach oil rig on a boat first of all to be able to reach the red room. It should also afford the players who decide to approach oil rig by boat the active protection provided by the SAM sites, deterring large groups from countering via minicopters or scrap helis, and giving solos, duos and trios a chance to defend the monument against larger groups. Okay, so this is another idea that I really feel like I shouldn't have to discuss, but given its conspicuous absence from the game, I really feel like someone should remind FacePunch that they're missing one of the most fundamental features of the most popular raiding tool in the game, that being that their remotely detonated C4 plastic explosive doesn't have a fucking remote. And it's not like they don't have the mechanics necessary to implement this feature into the game, as in previous updates they introduced new electrical components such as the RF pager, which is specifically designed to receive alerts on dedicated radio frequencies, and the RF transmitter, which is used to send out a signal on a dedicated radio frequency, which in its current state is at best used to open a garage door and is at worst obsolete. And as if to take the piss, Facepunch even went as far as to write the word kaboom on the side of the radio transmitter, clearly indicating that they intended to use it as a remote detonator at some point, but clearly they never got around to doing it. Perhaps they got distracted and were too busy adding a poker table to the abandoned cabins. You know, that one feature they dedicated an entire update to and which nobody fucking uses. Okay, so I was going to go on about this idea at length, but it turns out Facepunch have already considered adding it in the future update, possibly as soon as next wipe, but there's not much else other than to say yeah. Player control drones are coming to Rust soon. To give credit where it's due, at least Rust is adding an original idea for once. Given that Facepunch has alluded to the addition of drones in the next coming update, my next suggestion is an amalgamation of the previous two ideas, that being a combination of a remote controlled drone with a remote controlled explosive. This could be as simple as Facepunch adding a single inventory slot onto a drone to hold a remote explosive, or by having a player simply throw the remote C4 onto a drone and then having another player pilot that towards an enemy. Both of these methods have been previously explored by the Call of Duty community, with the recent release of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 actually including a remote controlled bomb drone available to the player as a killstreak, clearly demonstrating the Facepunch that this is something that can be replicated in Rust. Since the release of Rust, melee weapons have been a staple component in the game, however they are vastly underutilized during the mid to late stages of the wipe. This is for one simple reason. Players lack the shields necessary to complement melee weapons in combat. How is it in a game such as Rust, where players have the ability to craft not only doors but entire bases out of wood, yet lack the ability to do something as simple as to cut a circle from a wooden door and fasten it as a shield? All a player would need is the necessary materials such as wood, metal frags and leather to craft themselves a shield. Even the most rudimentary shield would fit perfectly within a tier 1 tech tree, but it doesn't need to stop there. Players could harvest road signs and in combination with metal frags could craft themselves a tier 2 shield. The next logical step would be for players to take high quality metal and metal frags to craft a transparent riot shield that would fit perfectly within the tier 3 workbench tech tree. The final tier of shields could be found exclusively in heavily tiered crates or above, that could consist of a high quality military grade ballistic shield equipped with a visor that could provide players with full frontal protection from ballistic damage. Of all the previously discussed ideas, I feel that adding shields to Rust would present the greatest change to the current established meta of the game. Melee weapons would become a lot more prevalent throughout the duration of the wipe, with the primitives to the early stages of the wipe seeing the most use. Weapons such as bows and crossbows would finally have a primitive stage counter, and tier 1 weapons such as nailgun and DB may no longer be the close quarter combat weapon of choice. Now for those of you who followed the development of Rust, you might be aware that the developers had previously explored the addition of shields, but ran into game limitations when equipping secondary items in the player's left hand. However, I'm hopeful that in 2023, shields are one of the features that will get a second look at by the developers, and are something that we may see in the very near future.
Do it!
Since the addition of vehicles to Rust, one of the most popular combinations for players to use is something known as the camper van. This consists of a 4-slot chassis equipped with an armoured cockpit, an engine module, and a camper van module. Now whilst the combination of all three make for an effective vehicle for players to roam in and raid, they deprive players the ability to equip other modules that may offer more utility. What if there was a way to combine the core features of all three modules into a single 2-slot module, similar to how the single-slot cockpit module comes equipped with seating and an engine? Fortunately for us, such a design already exists, and can be found travelling the roads all throughout Europe. Now heavy goods vehicles, commonly referred to as trucks or lorries, typically consist of a driving cockpit situated atop of an engine, with a sleeping cabin in the rear. Such a design could easily be replicated in Rust, and can be achieved by fitting an engine module underneath an armoured cockpit module, equipped with a single bench bed to allow players to respawn, such as those found in the camper van module. The engine module could even be fitted to the rear of the armoured cockpit module, with a sleeping bench fitted atop it, connected to the back of the armoured cockpit module, creating an open cabin. This bench bed could come equipped with 2 respawn points, as well as allowing seating for 2. This means that the entire module would come equipped with seating for 4, provided by 2 seats in the front for the driver and front passenger, and the bed bench in the rear of the cabin which would provide seating for 2 more passengers. All of this could be achieved in a tier 3 module that only occupies 2 slots on a vehicle chassis. This would provide players with 2 unoccupied vehicle module slots on a 4-slot vehicle chassis, providing players with ample space to fit either a tanker module or 2 storage modules. I feel this would make a great addition to the vehicles in Rust, and be a popular avenue for Rust role players to live out their fantasies of being a truck driver. Okay, so I think I speak for the entire Rust community when I say the addition of the next item is of the utmost importance, as it really represents the Rust community as a whole. Okay, so many of you might be wondering why I've decided to include this item on the list, but for anyone who's spent any significant amount of time working with the electrical system in Rust, there's one very specific but incredibly frustrating problem you've likely encountered. That being that you have your entire electrical system set up in one part of your base, and you need to connect the primary circuit in one part of your base to a secondary circuit in another. The problem being that the secondary circuit is located in an isolated part of the base, typically cut off by a partition wall, with no such means such as passing through a doorway to travel between both areas of the base. Such a scenario is common when players use building methods such as suicide bunkers to isolate key parts of their base such as their loot room or their TC. The obvious problem that this presents is that in order for a player to connect one electrical component to another, they have to remain alive with a wire tool equipped in their hand. This makes it impossible for a player to connect their secondary circuit to their primary circuit, as unequipping the wire tool for any reason after interacting with the primary electrical component, such as in the instance of respawning on a sleeping bag to enter a suicide bunker, cancels the interaction with the first electrical component, making the connection impossible. Players must be standing in front of the electrical component with a direct line of sight in order to make the connections. It's also impossible for players to interact with an electrical component from the opposite side of a wall. When making a connection between two electrical components, wires themselves can pass unimpeded through solid objects such as walls, floors and foundations. But what if Facepunch was to add an electrical component with the specific intended purpose of allowing the pass-through of power through a solid object such as a wall? This is where my idea of an electrical socket or plug terminal comes in. Deploying this plug socket would function similarly to a drop box, that placing it on a wall would occupy physical space on both opposing sides of the same wall. Similar to how a drop box allows players to deposit loot from the front side and remove it from the back, players could connect an electrical component to one end of a plug terminal, with the power passing through to the corresponding plug terminal on the opposite side of the wall. This would allow the plug socket terminal to function as an intermediary connection point between two electrical components, bridging the gap between an isolated secondary circuit and the primary circuit of a base. Now, whilst this electrical component fills a very specific and niche role, I feel it's something that developers overlooked during the initial implementation of the electrical update in Rust, and I feel that it would be something that would be very well received by the community if the developers decided to include it in a future update. Now, if you've made it to the end of this video, I'd be interested in hearing any ideas that you might have for any future updates in Rust. You can leave those in the comment section below. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, and if it proves to be a popular topic, I might revisit in the very near future. Now, if you enjoy my content and want to see more, I recommend you subscribe, as my next video is an incredibly lengthy and very special one, as I recently got to compete in the Trust in Rust 4 Twitch streamer event, and I'm currently in the process of trying to edit down over 3 hours of gameplay footage, which I promise to upload as soon as it's ready, and will be well worth the wait and watch. Now, for those of you who might be interested in playing alongside me in game, I typically play on Rustified EU Small for the Thursday wipe, and Rustified EU Odd Junior for their Monday wipe. But there's really not much else to say, other than see you next wipe, and thanks for watching.